so we are just excited to be kicking off the year here for our 2023 Beyond College webinar series. And so, Dr. Harper, you got us for 12 installments. Can you deal with me for 12 shows is the question.
I'm ready for it.
All right. We are equally as excited about all of these things. And so to our scholars that are joining us, Happy New Year. You're back on campus. We're getting back to business in all ways, shapes, and forms relative to our academics and to our recent graduates, because I know we have some folks on that recently graduated that are joining us today. Congratulations to those folks that had the fall graduations and are now embarking on your career pathways in different areas. Our commitment to you is to give you great content and action-packed information throughout these broadcasts. Hey, as you'll see here, just a little bit about Wells Fargo. This is from one of our recent press releases, so kind of our boilerplate. Hey, here are the things to spotlight. $1.9 trillion in assets under management within our firm. 10% of the small businesses here across the U.S. in some way, shape, or form have a banking relationship with our institution. My hope is that that number makes you smile. Of course, we've got a lot of great accolades from national organizations. You see the different lines of business that are listed there. And we're going to hear today from some leaders that are doing amazing work in some of these given areas. And at all times, you can always jump out to our Wells Fargo Stories channel to be able to learn more about the things that we're doing. Hey, we got to spotlight you all as scholars. From a strategic investments perspective, Wells Fargo, over the last 10, 11 years or so now, I guess now going into 12 years, our firm has provided over $110 million of financial support for scholarships, for programming, for putting together events like these in celebration and in support of our amazing students and scholars. In addition, about $34 million during that time frame has gone specifically towards supporting HBCUs, or historically Black colleges and universities. So we're very, very excited about those dollars, and we're seeing increases and growth happening in all kinds of those areas, not just for today, but for the future as well. As we continue on here, we're going to spotlight something. Every broadcast, we're going to bring up something that's relevant. You all can see it with my backdrop here with things, but we're going to continue to spotlight our groundbreaking HBCU Legends card program. What I'll say about this is today we have 22 brand marks that are available for any of our Wells Fargo customers, specifically for their debit card products here, again, with a special emphasis on debit cards. But we have 22 brands in celebration of our historically Black colleges and universities and those that support them. You'll actually see these represented here. And so special shout out to all of the schools that you see represented. But hey, if you're an HBCU student or an HBCU grad or HBCU supporter and you don't see your school here, get in contact with our friends there that you see on the right-hand side of this slide, our buddy Tamika Lindsay and our great friend Damon Ford. Reach out to them. They can provide you with information about how we can get your amazing schools connected in and engaged in this work. So HBCU Legends, we may drop something into the chat a little bit later on today so you can learn a little bit more. Hey, we're going to keep it moving here as we continue on. Angel, thank you. We've kind of covered some of these items already, but we do need to give just a very, very quick disclaimer, just to remind everyone that today's webinar is being recorded. If you choose not to participate in a recorded webinar, now's a great time for you to politely disconnect. At the same time, over the next 7 to 10 business days, we'll be sharing the playback details for this webinar and making it available through our respective YouTube channels. To anyone that's listening to the playback, thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about any of the content that we share today, please don't hesitate to contact the Wells Fargo team and or our friends over at the Jackie Robinson Foundation. All right, you can't get on the line without us getting into the numbers. You know we got to talk about it. As of kickoff, we just had Angel repull these numbers. As of kickoff, 177 RSVPs. So scholars, you have 1,000 places you could be, but you decided to come and hang out with us. So thank you so much for doing that. We also love to shout out the top schools. Today, we're going to focus on the top 3. So coming in 3rd place from a registrations perspective, we've got our amazing CUNY partners over at CUNY York. So shout out to the city of my birth for showing up in strong numbers. Dr. Harper, we got to have DC in the house. HU running through the tape as the silver medalist here from a numbers perspective. So Howard, we love you. Thanks so much for joining us. But listen, I think this one might be a first timer running through the top of the medal stand, the University of the Virgin Islands, UVI. Fire from UVI. Shout out to UVI. What about, maybe we should do one of our broadcasts from the University of the Virgin Islands. Maybe that's what we need to do going forward. We'll see how that works out. Hey, listen, so again, special shout out. And I've seen we've got some high schools represented as well. There are high schoolers that are on. Thank you for joining, and just continue to share this information with others so we can continue to fill the lines. Hey, here's where we're going. We're going to talk about managing your personal finances today. We're certainly going to be spotlighting a little bit on the budgeting side. We're going to talk about saving. We may dip our toe briefly into the importance of spending and budgeting and other kinds of things in those areas. We're also going to talk about credit. You know, we may have folks on the lines today that have already established credit or may have built credit, but some of you all may be just beginning your credit journey. No matter where you are, we want to give you some principles to keep in mind and then give you some actions that you can follow to start building credit for the future. It's important to understand the way that you can use credit to benefit you in your personal lives and also things that you may be doing from a business perspective. And a life lesson, pay yourself. And then I've got a dash there on purpose. And by the end of this broadcast, you're going to be able to fill in what that word is. You may already be thinking about what that word should be, but pay yourself something. And I think you're going to be able to learn more about that. Hey, don't forget, team, thank you to everyone that submitted questions to us in advance. We have a number of those that have come in. We're going to be able to address some of those as we're going through. And then Dr. Harper and the team from JRF, the Jackie Robinson Foundation, will be facilitating the more formal components of the Q&A. As a reminder, if you submit a question to us, those questions come into us confidentially. Now, keep in mind, if you post it in the chat, everyone is going to see that. But you do know this, you can submit questions to us. We're never going to read your name on the broadcast. We're not going to say this question came in from Tiki, or this question came in from Angie or from Tom. We're not going to do that. But we will simply read those questions and then share them. And I promise you, if it's a question that's top of mind for you, it's going to be top of mind for someone else. Don't forget, you got access to our playback. Shout out to our friends at TMCF. They actually helped us with last year's broadcast, the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, so you can actually access the 2022 playback. And then we get to the end of the call, we're going to give you a quick survey to give us feedback on presenting. Hey, but don't forget to get social with us. These hashtags are embedded into a lot of the slides. If something jumps out to you, jump on social media, use the hashtags there for Wells Fargo Beyond College, and of course, for JRF or Jackie Robinson Foundation. You can simply utilize those hashtags in any of the items that you are sharing. All right, with that said, enough of the preamble, the pre-guys. You know, you had great things with Dr. Harper at the top, and you had to deal with me for a minute. But let's get to the real stars of today's broadcast. Really excited that we've got with us today Iwanike Brady and also Teresa Tyson. Iwanike actually brings 20 years plus of corporate experience and connectivity into the banking industry. And yes, she started when she was 16. So we know that already. But Iwanike is a trusted partner and a great colleague. You'll see the link here, the QR code. If you click that should take you over to her LinkedIn profile to go ahead and get connected there. So Iwanike, we'll bring you on for a moment just to say hello. And I do want you to give just a little bit of your background. We'll give you maybe 60 seconds or so just to share a high-level overview of your background. So ladies and gentlemen, the next voice you'll hear is that of Iwanike Brady.
Thank you. Happy to be here, Dewey, with my peers and the Jackie Robinson Foundation. Thank you, Dr. Harper. I love the opportunity to speak candidly about our lived experiences. So I appreciate the opportunity to join. So again, my name is Iwanike Brady. I lead the African-American segment for Wells Fargo Home Lending. In my role, I'm responsible for creating and implementing strategy in support of addressing the racial disparity in wealth and home ownership that we face as a nation. At Wells Fargo, we are deeply committed to working hard to closing the gap and creating a more inclusive housing system. As Dewey said, I've been in the mortgage business inching towards 20 years. I'm a graduate of The Ohio State University, the
The
Ohio
Ohio
State.
State. The.
I'm a proud member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. I'm a mom to an amazing 6-year-old. And, with my team, I lean on the mantra that the work we do is legacy work. And I firmly believe in planting seeds for growing homeownership and having conversations like today. These are great ways to plant seeds for how budgeting and money management can play a key role in growing your own generational wealth. So I'm excited to be here. We'll certainly talk a little bit more about my journey throughout today, but I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Dewey.
Iwanike, you're very welcome. And you are hailing from and joining us today from?
Maryland, I am.
Okay.
So I'm proud to see that Howard's joined in the ranks. So
HU always shows up. The Bison know how to do it. So, all right, go ahead and get scanned and get connected to Iwanike. Listen, let's jump on the Big Bird. We're going to head out to the city by the bay. You've heard it talked about in songs. Some folks left their heart out there. And so we're going to bring on our great partner in Teresa Tyson. Teresa is actually a part of our amazing financial health team within the Wells Fargo Foundation. 35 years of experience in the industry. She's been there, she's done that. She owns the t-shirt and the hat for everything in these kinds of areas. Teresa Tyson, thank you so much for being on with us today. We are related about all that you're going to be sharing with us. Want to extend the same courtesy to you, just give you a moment to share a little bit about your background and experience. And then with that, we're going to jump in with both of you to our content. So ladies and gentlemen, I wish I had theme music to play for her. Let's bring her up at this time. Teresa Tyson.
Thank you, Dewey. That was a great introduction. I think I need you all the time to introduce me.
I'm a hype man, wingman, whatever you want to call it.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you to the Jackie Robinson Foundation, Dr. Harper and Dewey for inviting me. So I'm really excited to be here today and share some of my lived experience. I've been with the company for 35 years. I am working our Wells Fargo Foundation on the philanthropy financial health team. So I am responsible for managing our giving budget and processing over 70 nonprofit grants and managing some of our national partnerships and our conference in our national conferences. So I'm really excited and happy to be here. So thanks for inviting me.
All right, Teresa, thank you for those kind words. And I think there's so much that you're going to be able to share with our audience here for today. 35 years, team, of experience from Teresa. 20 plus there with Iwanike. I got my shoes off so I can count. That's 55 years of corporate experience here, not including the experience that Dr. Harper has and other leaders that will be a part of today's discussion. So we can go there, we can have very candid conversations relative to things. And I'll add to this as we pivot over to our first question for our panelists. We want you all to know that this is a safe space. This is a space where we can have real dialogue in a respectful, transparent way. And we want you all to leave this broadcast with notes. I hope you've got a pen. I hope you've got your device there to be able to capture some notes as we're going along here. But we also want you to utilize the Q&A feature in the chat. So if something jumps off to you or something that you'd like to share, go ahead and drop it into the chat. Our team will be able to monitor those items as they come in. And remember, those items will come in confidentially as we share them, but your name may show up for anything that you display. All right, we've got a handful of questions here. We're off to a good start relative to things. And so let's start with a simple one here. Let's go back in time, back to the campus days, back to the high school days even. But Iwanike, let's start with you maybe on this one if we can. Talk about any financial barriers that you experienced either in your days at The Ohio State University. We won't talk about the college playoff. I know that's a tough subject there. The kick, my man missed the kick right at midnight. That was tough, but it was a great season for you guys. But talk about financial barriers that you experienced either in college or in early career. Maybe spotlight one or two, and then talk to us about how you actually addressed them or how you overcame them. So, Iwanike, let's start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think I'll start post-college. So right after graduation, I ended up getting a job cross country. So I went to school for fashion design. I was not in finance and mortgage. I didn't seek to come out and be in mortgage. And so
Okay.
this wasn't my first love, but mortgage quickly became my passion. But I worked in the entertainment industry, and I did Fashion Week in LA, and I worked at Women's Wear Daily and Golden Globes, all that good stuff. And moving cross country as a 19-year-old is difficult and expensive. I moved from Ohio to Los Angeles. And so there's quite
Wow.
a significant jump in your lifestyle and cost of living. And I ended up, it was for an internship that was unpaid, which meant I had to take multiple jobs, right, to be able to subsidize living. I had the blessing of having family in the area, so that did provide a lot of coverage for my basic needs, but really it's just having to understand and take some of the systems that I started to put in place for myself so that I could budget. There were many days where it was foil packets of beans and rice to get through, because that's all you could really afford. And so it
Yeah.
was really understanding what was a need versus a want, and starting to build systems for myself so that I could save some money. I could, network and be able to get into a space that eventually I was offered a position that did relocate me back to the East Coast where my family was. And so I think that was a really good lesson for me in the very beginning, to understand that the choices that I make now are going to impact me down the road. And I needed to be really intentional in how I spent my money and how I saved it. And that was a good lesson straight out of school. It was, that's the first time you really have to fend for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Iwanike, was it tough to move from one side of the country to the other? Again, for a role that was aspirational for you and something that you wanted to do, but again, didn't have that solidified piece of a salary. I'm trying to put it gently.
Yeah, I think that was the hardest part, but it really
Okay.
opened my eyes to all the different opportunities that were out there and ways that you could leverage relationships and networks to get access to, jobs or opportunities and you really have to prove yourself and show up so that you can start to earn some income. So it was challenging. I was young at heart, so
Okay.
the late nights and early mornings didn't impact me the same way they do now. I had a little more stamina and energy, so that was a good time, I guess, to really be in that type of a position.
Okay.
I was able to withstand it, but it was a good first lesson out of school.
Okay. Excellent points there. Teresa, thank you. Iwanike, let's give this same one to you. Anything in the early portion of your career that really stands out specifically on the financial barriers or challenges side? Talk to them.
Yeah, so I'm going to come to talk to you from the standpoint of my lived experience,
Yeah.
because I didn't go to college. So I was a young parent. I had my son right out of high school. I'm going to say that so you guys don't start calculating my age. But I had some financial barriers. I knew the basics about banking, some basics, I would say, because my grandfather used to pay the bills and he showed me how to write a check. So I used to have to write the checks for him, and he would transfer them to a book, his ledger, he would say. But the first barrier that I encountered and experienced when I first came to Wells Fargo is that of my 401k and a pension plan, because during those days we had a pension plan in both. So I didn't know what a 401k was. I didn't understand it. I just knew it was a benefit from the company, and it was a great benefit because my parents told me that was a great benefit. However, they could not speak to me about my 401k and what to invest in, how to start it. So I lost out on 10 years of investing in my retirement because I didn't understand it. I was afraid to ask anyone who did not look like me how to start. So that was a barrier because I was embarrassed because I didn't know. So it wasn't until someone who looked like me and said, "Hey, let me show you how to do it." And did I still understand it? Not really, but just the fact that someone who looked like me sat me down and said, "This is what you should do." So I lost out on quite a few dollars, towards my retirement. So I would say that was the basic barrier that I had. So I will say, don't be afraid to ask anyone if you don't know. representation does matter, but however, it could be someone who doesn't look like you that can help you, and that could be a mentor or a sponsor for you down the road in your career.
Teresa, you have shared in the exact way that we want to have this conversation take place. Scholars, you see the level of depth that our partners are going to be going into here. So again, as questions come in or you hear something, drop something into the chat or submit those questions to us real time and we can get those plugged in. So Teresa, again, you said 10 years there where you weren't investing in that 401k. That may be a new term to some of the scholars that are on. Can you go a little bit deeper and even talk about what that is? And then what made you decide to actually start doing that investing? You touched on it. I want you to hit it one more time.
So our 401k is, your Roth account, your retirement. So it's an opportunity for you to invest in your retirement. So you'll have that income from your retirement, Social Security, and whatever savings that you put away. So it was 10 years. So I worked for someone at the company who looked like me, who was like an auntie. You know how the aunties are. They say, hey, you need to do this. And so she sat me down and she was like, what? You're not investing? You're not getting that extra money from Wells Fargo? That's going to match you? And I was like, I don't understand it. I was afraid to ask. So she sat me down and said, this is what you are going to do. And I said, yes, ma'am.
And that was your call to action. You want to give a shout out? Call to action. You want to give a shout out to that special partner that encouraged you? I think I know who it is.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to her, although she's retired, but it was the legendary Brenda Wright.
Come on now, say it.
What you going to do? So those are the life lessons. And I said, yes, ma'am. I'm gonna pay attention. So yes.
An exceptional leader within our institution who I had the privilege of working with prior to her retirement around things. So Teresa, again, thanks for the real talk. Scholars, I'm going to drop something into the chat here. My buddy Malcolm Etheridge gave me this link a long time ago in Investopedia. It's actually a really good resource. You're going to hear a couple of different financial terms that we'll be referencing today. So I'll drop that into the chat, and that's literally the glossary of different terms. You may be hearing some of those things. Teresa, you got us started. We got to stick with you here on this next one. Because we're going to say the D word, and I don't mean the one that some people be saying. We're going to use another word here. We got to talk about it. How do you let's say that some of our scholars, maybe they're graduating and they had to take out some of the student loans. Maybe we have partners on that, listen, real talk, right? Or maybe there's some partners on. Go, please.
Because I didn't have student loans, because I didn't go to college.
Yeah.
So I had to jump into a vocational school so I can take care of my son, right? So that's how I came to Wells Fargo, from that vocational school to take care of my son. So, my grandmother, my mother's mother, she was a Renaissance woman. And so she always said, you got to pay yourself first.
Come on now.
And she said,
come on
I
now.
don't care how much money you make, pay yourself first. So she said, start off, 10%. My little limited money at the time, I was like, that's a lot of money. I can't pay myself 10%. So, but I had a debt to her. So let me tell you about that debt to her.
Please.
In her efforts to teach me how to manage my credit and to help me, she bought me a car when I first started out. And so I had a debt to her. So I had to pay off that debt to her every month. She bought a car, but what she told me was that she got a loan and I needed to pay that loan back to her. So that was my first lesson in managing my debt. So I had to pay her and I had to save some money at the same time.
So you found a way to pay yourself, and we talked to the scholars earlier in the broadcast, pay yourself. Teresa gave you the answer, but we're going to ask you again later on what that answer is. You found a way to take care of the obligations that you had there for paying back the loan for the car, but also saving at the same time. So it sounds like there's a way to balance those two.
Yeah, and don't think that you can't do it because during those times, I didn't make a lot of money, but I had to save, one, because I had a responsibility. I had a son I needed to take care of. I needed a car, so I definitely was going to pay her for the car because she was going to be the repo man, seriously, and come back and take that car if I didn't pay her.
She didn't have extra set of keys, did she? It wasn't that
She had an
bad.
extra set of keys. You know, she even, the pink slip came to me, and my limited knowledge didn't realize that meant ownership to me. I could have kept it, right? But I went to her and I said, hey, this came to me. She said, oh, I'll take that.
Oh my goodness. I need to meet your auntie. I'm gonna have to get some more insight from her around the stuff. Let's pivot here. Wanake, same thing here.
Yeah,
Talk us through.
I actually want to touch on
Go.
something that Teresa shared, and that like that's a great example. And I also want to go a step further, that in life, folks may do this for you or may ask you to do this for them. And you have to be really mindful of how that impacts you. And I know we'll get to conversations around credit and things like that, but these are one of those situations that in doing something nice or responsible for someone else, you have to make sure that those that are incurring or taking on that debt under your name are going to be responsible to do that. So there's a lot of trust, right, that was in there, and a lot of responsibility that was placed in that space, which is great because it was helpful for you and your family situation. But it's one thing that we find in home ownership that becomes a barrier, because folks and families take on this responsibility for family members, and you don't get individuals that are willing to be responsible and pay that debt back, and it impacts your credit. So I think that that's a great lesson to kind of share out with the scholars about the right people in your circle, or that have access to or impact your credit, right? You want to make sure that you have responsible people in your network. But in regards to like balancing and saving money and paying off debt, you can do both at the same time. These are parallel tracks, right? You don't have to sacrifice one or the other. And every little bit, small increments add up quickly. It's the same as investing. You could, invest $10 a month if you wanted to, but over time, it's going to start to compound and build, and you'll see the impacts of that. And so the same thing happens when you invest in yourself, right? So when you're putting that money aside, you're saying, this is money that I have access to, whether it's a hardship, it's something that you're saving towards as a reward for yourself, a trip, whatever the case may be. But you want to make sure that you're putting into it, you're not skipping it. Certainly when debt comes up, there's things that happen. I can give you a perfect example. Today, my HVAC went out in my house. It's going to be 12 degrees next week, but it's something that as a homeowner, I have to have money set aside, or I have to decide I may not be able to put the full amount that I want to pay myself this month, but I have to take some of that to support making sure that I'm being responsible and caring for my home and taking care of things that need to be repaired around the house. And so I wouldn't think of them as competing, but parallel. Like they're things you're doing at the same time if you have debt. I mean, the goal is to, be in a space that you could be comfortable. I'll say this, not all bad debt is bad, but you have to get into a space that you kind of understand the difference between good and bad debt.
You want to a lot of great life lessons there, and we wish you well there for the HVAC system, and having had to do that last year. And it's something, to your point, you have to have some reserves set aside or be in a position where you can pay it over time, which, that's part of, you can't always pay everything all at once. Sometimes you do have to do it over time with things. So a good example there. All right, I'm keeping an eye on the clock. Scholars, reminders, Q&A. We are, I'm going to call it 23 minutes away from pivoting to you all for that. And so we're going to keep it going here with things, but go ahead and start submitting those questions. Dr. Harper says she's already got a couple that have come in. Remember, those come into us confidentially, so keep those coming. All right, Iwanike, let's stay with you on this one if we can. We got to talk about those credit cards for a minute. And we got debit and credit cards here. Help us by starting to explain the difference between a debit card and a credit card for students. We get this question all of the time. And then how do you balance through using those in ways that are beneficial to you? And Teresa, I may come to you for a quick thought right after this one.
Sure. So your debit card, I would think of that more as like your cash, your lifeline to your day-to-day expenses. Your credit cards are going to come with, so first instance, when you don't have the funds in your debit card, it's not, that's when it's going to limit your access, right, to being able to spend, or it's related to what you have within your account. When you look at credit cards, that's going to be tied to being extended credit. And so the bank is giving you money, or the institution that's issuing the credit card is giving you money. And in an agreement, right? So your card that you receive, the plastic, is going to be kind of your agreement, along with the paperwork, that you're going to repay it at a certain rate, that they're affording you to have access to funds, or this what we call capital or cash.
Sure.
And so you're able to use that to make purchases and things like that. But it does come at a cost to you as the user, because the bank or the institution is giving you access to these funds. And so that's
Okay.
the overarching difference. As far as for me to navigate through them, I give all of my cards a system. You know, I'm a firm believer in kind of having a vision, making it plain, right? Like knowing my why am I spending this money? Where is it going to? What's its purpose for? And when you really create a plan, a budget, or you have goals that you're trying to aspire to, you start to assign your different accounts for how you want to use them. And so
Okay.
for me, my day-to-day life expenses come out of my debit card account. I pay off my, I'm one of the firm believers that I pay off my credit cards every month. I don't carry a balance. And that's really for credit and having access to credit. I'd much rather be able to have access to credit when I don't need it and build that up, versus being in a situation where I need credit and I'm not able to get it because I wasn't responsible in paying my debts. And so that's a good way to look at it. And then within your debit card, you should be knowing your balances. I check every day. I'm in banking, so that may be just my makeup.
Right.
But I check multiple times a day, you know, the market, my accounts, and different things like 401ks, things like that.
Sure.
As you get older and you spend your money in different ways, you know, you look at different places where you can borrow against. And so credit cards might not be the optimal place for you to do that. It may be other investments that you have. But you know, just like we have one thing as a trick, though, a lot of cards look similar. You could easily use one by mistake, and it pulls out your wallet. So if you have things like your HBCU Legend cards or things like that that have very distinct logos or things that are on your cards, it's something that, you know, that's my debit card. I can use this card and it's for my day-to-day expenses, versus
Yes.
incurring extra fees on top of using a credit card that might look similar. I've done that. I know it's easy to do. So it's just creating systems for yourself so that you can stay on track with your plan.
All right. Lot to unpack there. Credit, debit. Debit is going to be kind of the ready cash. If I've got $200 in my account, if I go to use my debit card and I'm buying something that's $205, they're going to thank me for visiting, but I'm not going to be leaving with the item. Is that a fair way to put it?
For the most part.
For the most part. And everything was with a caveat, right? But with your credit card, it sounds like it's focused on paying over time. When you have that card, you are committing that what I'm charging here, I'm either going to pay this at the end of my billing cycle, or I'm going to pay it over a longer time period and run into something that's called interest. And so do we want to go there? How about we let Teresa talk about interest? I see it. She was shaking her head no. Teresa, you want to give it? Please take it away.
Well, I was going to say to the students that I am the poster child for what not to do.
Come on now.
Because I was using my credit cards when I first started out like it was free money. So I was incurring all of those interest fees that was high because, you know, I was just starting out as my credit. So when it was time to pay those bills, I put myself in a position where I was unable to pay those bills because of my limited budget of being a single parent. You know, what you're going to pay first? You're going to pay your electric bill and your rent first so that you're not unhoused. And then you look at that credit card and it's like, I don't have any money to pay that because I needed to do this. So I am the poster child for what not to do. So for those credit cards, be careful. I'm gonna tell you the same thing I told my son. You have a credit card for emergency purposes only, not to feed yourself on a daily basis, not to go get those next little Prada shoes or Gucci boots. It is for emergency purposes only. So that is the lesson for me, was that, you know, don't run those cards up to the limit because it's not free money, because eventually you have to pay it back because those insurmountable interest fees will kill you.
So listen, this could be a 4-hour course on a lot of these subjects.
Just on credit.
Just on that subject alone. And so scholars, I'm dropping into the chat a great resource that comes from Teresa's team, handsonbanking.org. This is a great resource for our high schoolers that are on. You can click the tab in the upper right-hand corner that'll take you to the student side, and you can focus on the things that you need to be thinking about as high schoolers, college students. There are breakouts there. Spend some time unpacking this content. And you can also invite Teresa to your campus. You can invite Iwanike to your campus. They can come there personally or be able to come there virtually, or members of their teams, to unpack these things in greater detail. So again, I think you've gotten a couple of lessons there and a couple of actions that you need to be thinking about as you're balancing through. Team, anything else on this subject? Because I want to keep us moving. Anything else we want to touch on here?
No, I see we have a few questions in the Q&A on credit, but if we have some time, we can hit some of those.
Listen, I can't steal Dr. Harper's thunder. Listen, you all heard her kicking everything off. She's got a lot of those items. So we will touch on those items as we keep rolling through.
As you mentioned, though, emergencies is getting ready for homecoming an emergency. I used to get this from students when I was teaching at Howard all the time.
Yeah.
Is that an emergency? And I also had a response, but just from financial professionals, and we talk about priorities, is that one of those emergencies?
Hey, Liz, I still ask my boss if I can expense hair and makeup for for events. Clearly that didn't happen, but no, it depends on, what your outcomes are. Not an emergency. That's when you get down to that needs versus wants, but
look out. So I think we know the answer to that one, Dr. Harper. The dial is leaning towards leaning in that direction with given things. So, hey, listen, team, we're going to go through these last couple of items and then hand the reins over to Dr. Harper in about the next 10 or 12 minutes. Angel, if we can, Lucy, let's jump over to this next question. We touched on this one a minute ago. And Teresa gave a perfect example there of a family member that helped her get on the right financial journey. I want you panelists again to unpack this a little bit more. Teresa, again, we can maybe start with you on this one. Talk about the importance of having that family member there to support you, but then let's also talk about the flip side of this. And you all touched on it earlier. Let's say you co-sign for someone, and Iwanike, maybe you touch on this, and they don't do well with managing their credit. How that can impact you. Panelists, please, I want you all to touch on this one. How do you strike the right balance there between friends and family when it comes to your money and your financial goals?
Well, I had to laugh at myself for this because I like everything Gucci, meaning I like everything that's luxury. I want everything that looks nice. But my husband is the balancing factor for me because he says, just because we have it don't mean you need to spend it, right? So he is the balancing factor because he's the saver. He, managed that piece of it. So I would say that he helps in that regard. I have to look at my needs versus my wants, and what's the end game. So he helps me with that. Like before, my grandmother helped me at the beginning, and bought a car for me, and I had to pay her back. So you have to balance the act of not allowing your friends to influence you. If they, like we saw the news, the latest tell for a bag, or the latest Gucci or Prada boots, because I have a son that's in that age group. He want to buy the latest Prada boots that look like Shrek, and I was like, no, dude, you can't afford that. So you have to have the balance, and have to have somebody to tell you no, or what's the right thing to do in the moment.
So listen, I'm gonna steal a line from our buddy Cheryl McDonald, and I think she heard a national speaker say this, and she shared it with us a long time ago. Another great Wells Fargo colleague that's retired. Don't go buying a Land Rover if you ain't got no land. So you need, and again, I my apologies. I don't know the national leader that shared that, but that has always stuck with me. And so make sure you're setting those priorities. And nothing says you can't get the fancy belt or be able to get the shoes, the J's maybe that you're interested in or something else, but give it time. And let's save, let's continue to pay ourselves, insert the answer there. And then long-term, we can focus on some of these other pieces. Iwanike, same thing with you on this. Anything you want to touch on briefly on this one?
Yeah, so for me, it's really surrounding yourselves with folks that want to see you be successful.
Oh,
And
there
I
you
say
go.
that because so within my group, and I think there might be a session that's on this, and I think it's great if you all touch on this at a later date, but I literally have an advisory board for my finances. And I've always had one. In college, my friends thought I was crazy, but I just knew I had certain goals for myself. And
Sure.
that meant that we talked about finances, which wasn't a norm, right? So even now, like I have a CPA, which is so basically someone that helps me with my taxes,
Sure.
and I have wealth advisors. I lean on my corporate executive friends across different industries, not just in finance, but in other spaces so that I can be knowledgeable in things other than just what I'm aware of in my role. I have attorneys in my group, and I
Yes.
really meet with them on a monthly basis. And I talk about what are my goals that I'm trying to accomplish. I budget on an annual basis versus a monthly. And it
Okay.
helps me because when you get into situations where you're making big purchases like a car or a home, or you want to take an amazing family vacation or something like that, or you're planning for something, knowing what you need monthly is kind of like you get to just pay your bills. But when you really think about the trajectory of what you need for the year,
Yeah.
it's kind of it puts your mindset in a different space, that you understand that if I spend and I buy this bag this month, I know it's going to impact all of these other things throughout the rest of the year. When you have that monthly perspective, you don't really understand the further down the line impacts that your money's going to have, because you
Mm.
made I don't want to say a poor decision, but a questionable one, or one that you may not be as, it might not bring you as much joy a couple months down the road as it is right in this purchasing moment. So,
Yep.
but you have friends that hold you accountable to that, or family. Even through COVID, I had a group with my family every month where we got on a call and we talked about investments, because my family didn't understand investing. And so we took that time as a family to sit down and meet and talk about, this is what investing looks like. This is what this means. Let's, as a family, invest some money, and we can start to see it grow and ask questions of each other. But you start to hold each other accountable.
I love
And
it.
then you start to celebrate each other once you start seeing what being focused on what you're trying to accomplish has done for you, and accumulated over time. So I think it's really important to surround yourself with people that want to see you succeed.
And it sounds like in both of you all's examples here, you have internal partners that kind of help you in given areas. And when I mean internal, just meaning family members or close trusted friends, but you also have an external network. You mentioned a CPA, a certified public accountant.
Right.
You mentioned having legal counsel that you can bounce out items off of. Maybe you're interested in setting up a trust long term, or thinking about kind of being able to leave a legacy, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment. So I think all of those pieces are really, really important. Ladies, we're going to touch on two more here, then we're going to hand the reins over to Dr. Harper for the Q&A. We've got it on the screen. What is the most meaningful decision that you've made financially? Iwanike, let's start with you on this. I want to hear from both of you all just very, very briefly on this one. What's the most significant financial decision that you've made up to this point of your life? And Teresa, you'll be next.
You know, it's interesting. You just touched on it, and it was establishing a trust for my daughter.
Wow.
That was really important for me when I.
What is a trust? What is a trust? Break it down for me.
So it's essentially it is, and I'm
Well, let's disclaimer. Iwanike is not an attorney.
there you go. I'm
Nor
not
does she
giving
play one on TV or this webcast. The opinions that you are sharing are Iwanike's opinions only. That is the disclaimer.
There you go.
So,
It's
Iwanike,
not
what is a
financial
garden
advice,
variety
but it's
explanation of a
essentially
trust?
an opportunity to set up guardrails for her should something happen. But it's an opportunity. It's a way for me to transfer my wealth to her over time,
Yes, ma'am.
in a way that's established to my parameters that have been set forth. Is kind of the best way I can describe it. But setting up the trust for her, and then also building my own portfolio of properties. And so that's just in something. I bought my first home when I was in my 20s.
Come on.
And it's just something that has, as I learned about the business, it was something I wanted to make sure that I was involved in and had access to. And I want to make sure that my daughter has more equitable access to home ownership than I did.
I love it. I love it. Iwanike, thanks for that. Thanks for that. Teresa, same one here. Most impactful up to this point.
I will say two things. So one was I had to change my view of money and my relationship with money. I allowed money to lead me. So when I made the decision that I wanted to purchase a home, I started to lead my money and to manage it better and to manage my credit better. So because of that, I was able to buy a home. And so let me just say, I just purchased a home like 7 years ago. So the decisions you make early on in your life that are bad decisions and negative can negatively impact you later in life. So just make sure you're smart about managing your credit and your money.
Okay. Good information there. Great information, as a matter of fact. Angel, let's jump to slide 17 if we can here, and this will close out our kind of prepared questions that we have for the panelists. Again, I want us to continue on this theme of generational wealth. We hear that term mentioned all of the time. And panelists, again, on that, and ask both of you all to comment on this. What does it mean to have generational wealth? And why is it important to build that for, Wanake, you referenced a couple of times your daughter around this. Why is it important to build and then transfer that wealth along to others? Would you all spend a few minutes talking about that very important topic here?
Yeah, I mean, it's the things that you're pouring into. You want to be able to pass that down, and it's not just knowledge, or it's you know, your family history and things like that. But from a financial standpoint, you know, we are looking to be in a place where we're starting on our shoulders, not at our feet, right? And so you want to continue to lift up the generations that come after you, and so that they're set. You know, as parents, you always want to give more to your children than what you had, and part of that comes with education and knowledge. So understanding how to use your money, how to leverage it so that it can support you. And so your next generation doesn't always have to start at ground zero, but they can start where you left off. And when you put the right systems in place, that helps you to further that and compound, right, what you've started to build in your time.
Very good. Very good. So not starting straight from the ground up. I love your example that you're starting from shoulders up and keep building. Because again, if you were to give your daughter $1 million right now at this age, maybe that would not be the most ideal situation for her. But over time, as she continues to grow, it may be, you should know better how to deploy those resources, so to speak. So that's pretty interesting. Teresa, I'll let you close out the components on this one. Generational wealth transference. Talk about it.
Yeah. So I will say for me, and I'm just gonna put this put it out there because it's on my heart. I think we as people, as Black people, need to hold on to our parents and our grandparents' homes and not sell them. We need to see the larger picture, and that is generational wealth. So for me, I have a home. I'm speaking to, you know, an attorney and to put my home in a trust so that my kids and my grandkids will have something. And so I think that's the message we need to speak to and talk about, that transferring of wealth. So because homeownership is the biggest opportunity for us to build wealth in our community. So if we begin that conversation now with our kids and our grandkids, the importance of these homes and keeping Big Mama's house in the family and not selling it, then that's how the wealth can begin in our families.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard from Iwanake Brady. You have heard now from Teresa Tyson in very candid ways. I think they've shared very, very candidly and very transparently their experiences up to this point. And so I would encourage everyone that's on with us today to follow up with them if there are additional questions. You've got the LinkedIn, so please go ahead and make those connections for any follow-up items that you weren't able to get addressed here up to this point of the broadcast. Don't forget the Q&A is still open relative to things. Iwanake, Teresa, we're going to ask you to hang on here with us because now we're getting to this is the bonus round, right? That's like name your favorite game show. I won't give anybody a free plug, but you got the first round and then you get to the bonus round. So with that said, to facilitate the bonus round of this discussion, we're going to hand the reins over to Dr. Caroline Harper. Dr. Harper, listen, we went deep fast, didn't we?
You did, but I love it though, especially the last bit of this conversation. I think the pandemic was a really good way for us to see why generational wealth matters. What we saw was that people who didn't own homes, even if it was big mamas or your uncles or your aunts, the house that you really don't like because it's the ugly house, what we found was that people who had those homes were safe. So that when jobs were gone, when landlords went up with rent, they had a place to stay, right? Which then reduced stress because they knew where they were going to be. They didn't have to leave their jobs. So it was really important when you start talking about that, to really think about what does that really mean in the long term? What does that mean in terms of just personal and financial safety, long term and stability? So thank you for those comments. And I will start with the Q&A. There are some great questions in here. And they really deal with kind of lifestyle. We know when you're in high school, when you're in college, you've got a lot going on. There's some fun things, there's some important things, there's some required things, and some of them are necessary. But I have a niece who's 16 right now who is dealing with, oh, but I play volleyball and I play in a competitive league, but then I want to go on spring break. And same with college students. You know, these are all things that we would like to do. And those are things that we can plan for, obviously. And so it's all about really being smart. So one of the first questions that came in the chat or the Q&A was actually, do you recommend any apps for budgeting versus spreadsheet methods?
For me, I'm a spreadsheet kind of girl. I live by spreadsheets. I don't personally use any apps that I can share or tell you about. I'm sure there are. Even within your own banking institutions, there's some apps and there's some opportunity within them to like create your own budgets or track how you do spending. So I would lean into, if you're already have an established banking relationship, to see what they offer. But it's going to come down to, one, what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish with the type of app, like whether it's budgeting or tracking your spending. And then there's or savings, and then others are for investments and things like that. But for me, the spreadsheet really gives you the ability to manipulate the numbers to see if, you know, if I have $1,000 a month car payment now and I go to a, you know, $1,500 a month car payment, how's that really going to impact me? That's where I find the value in spreadsheets.
Teresa, do you want to respond to that one?
You know, I don't have any apps. I am a spreadsheet girl, but I also just want to refer everyone to the hands-on banking site, because there are some help you to budget and to manage, you know, budgeting tools and resources there for that. But also, I got to shout out Wells Fargo. So there's, you know, there's a way to track your spending and on, you know, the Wells Fargo site if you know, bank with us. So there's some useful tools in that way. But I apologize, I'm not an app girl.
So another question really comes in almost along the same lines. Are money market accounts a good investment for college students? And again, these are students who are kind of thinking long term, but also how do you leverage your money? How do you make it go as far as you can? Particularly while you're young, you're working in internships, fellowships. So you're thinking about all these other things that are going to happen, like trying to get an apartment, trying to get a car, all these other things that are happening. Is it a good investment for a college student?
So I'll repeat, I'm not a financial advisor, so I can't give that advice. I will say though, that you could certainly dig into the research. You could see that the rates for money markets and bonds, I mean, we weren't really talking about bonds that heavy a few years ago. So you can start to see that as rates rise, right? And the treasury yield numbers are adjusting and fluctuating. You can see that there's opportunity in the market for money market accounts, bonds, and things of that nature for investments. And so if that's something that you're really interested in or that you follow, I would dig into that a little bit more. You can certainly seek guidance from a financial advisor, but this has been a time in the market that we've seen those rates go up and that they have a higher return.
I would just say, be clear on your goal and your objective of what you want to accomplish, and then consult with people you trust, because, you know, again, we cannot give advice because we're not financial, you know, licensed financial advisors. So I would just be clear on your objectives, think about what you want to accomplish, and consult with those people that you trust and a financial advisor.
Thank you. So we talked earlier about credit. We talked about kind of the credit card payments, but we all at some point in time were out and about, either at the mall or on campus or at school somewhere. And of course, they used to have the cool tables where you got the free t-shirt, or you got like a slice of pizza or nachos, or now it's a gift card somewhere, like really good. But with those credit cards comes responsibilities, right? And there's not really any time when you're talking to the person, they're really great and they're energetic. There's not really time to talk about the responsibilities and the accountability of having a credit card. Like, what does this really mean? And you all touched on it a little bit earlier, but what are general tips you would have? And particularly keep in mind that if I were in high school, or let's say early on in my career as a college student, what kind of tips do you have, and when should you pay the credit card bill?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I guess I would back up. If I were in high school, I would more than likely getting extended credit would be unless you're kind of older on the scale. I think that there's a certain age limit in order to have credit extended. I know parents that have added their children to their line of credit to help them establish credit. So going into college, you won't need the push of getting your own credit card and going through that cycle, which a lot of people fall into. So that's one that you can be added to your parents' line of credit. And given that you kind of have some guardrails and some parameters about how to responsibly do that. Some others opportunities to think about is, do you need credit, right? So is it a matter that generally you have credit because you're working towards either establishing a credit score. Now that we're getting into a space where paying your rent or your utilities is also being used for credit, I would just be mindful of why you would need that credit card. And I wouldn't rush into making those decisions to sign up, because everything that you sign your name to is going to have an impact on your financial picture. So I would just be really mindful of the why and engaging in some of those. And then I just wanted to piggyback on some spaces that you may want to use as a tool. There's a My Money map that also helps you track your spending that Teresa mentioned earlier through Wells Fargo. So I think that's also another resource that you could look into if you're looking for that savings and budgeting piece. But I think the why piece is important, because once you start going down that credit path, you've now opened lines of credit. This is now tracking you and this stays with you. So every time you open a line of credit, it's going to go into your credit profile. You're going to continually have to. So if you have lapses in your credit, that has impacts to your credit score. Mm-hmm. So it's like if you open it and never use it, that doesn't necessarily increase your credit score. It could have a negative impact to it, versus if you open it and use it once a month and pay it off. So there's different strategies that you can go into and how you manage your credit. So having an understanding of why you want that line of credit will really help establish how you use it and if it's the right choice for you.
And the only thing that I'll add is make sure you pay your bills on time. That credit card statement says it's due on the 4th of the month. You want to pay it on the 4th of the month, because if you don't pay it on time, you will incur a late fee in addition to what you've already, the fee that you're going to pay annually, perhaps, and the interest rate. So the important thing is to make sure you pay your bill on time, but also echo her sentiments is that if you don't need it, don't get it.
And I guess Dewey was right. We could talk about credit for hours.
Yeah.
But you do, and just in that same vein, just along with that, you have, as a consumer, the right to get your credit report on an annual basis for free. So you want to make sure that if you're establishing credit and you're starting to use it, that you want to continue to check it. And you want to make sure that the things that are listed on your credit report are appropriately listed to you. And it's not something that was, inadvertently placed or fraudulent. You just want to make sure that you're constantly checking and making sure that your credit profile represents your financial spending habits.
And we dropped into the chat, Iwanake, their annualcreditreport.com, annualcreditreport.com, a great resource where you can go and do that. And a rule of thumb is no one should ever charge you to pull your credit. This is a free resource that's available out there that you can do on an annual basis. So Dr. Harper, you got them rolling. Let's keep them coming.
I do. Iwanake, what you mentioned was meaningful, because there's another question kind of about that. As you talked about lapse in credit, like using your credit card. is there generally a period of time that you can go without using it? Like, is it a year or is it a few months, or is every credit card a little bit different? But is there a penalty for not using it? Like, particularly, does it harm your credit if you don't use your card?
So every card is a little bit different. Some have annual fees. So if you're not using it, you're still going to get your annual fee. So you'll have to pay that. If you don't pay that, that will negatively impact your credit score. It's really looking at, so credit is established to speak to like your ability to repay, right? So when you're looking at using credit cards, certain people use them in a system, you could pay them off. Teresa talked a little bit earlier about the APR, the interest rate that's charged. And so understanding that if you pay over time, it's going to cost a little bit more, and that has an impact to your financial picture as well. And so having an understanding of how you want to use your credit and your credit card. And when it comes to housing, certainly you want to have so many lines of credit established, different. And when I say lines of credit, so there could be credit cards, another line of credit could be a car payment, obviously a mortgage. There's student loans. There's different things that can establish lines of credit. And so as you're going through them, they have different weights. I would try to attribute that. So there's a different scale on how you look for credit. So going in to purchase a car, they might look at certain aspects of your credit a little bit different than if you're going in for a mortgage purchase. So it does matter in that regard. But if you I wouldn't say go get a credit card and then use it all the time just so that you're having constant payments on it. But you do want to make sure that you're able to document or account to why you may not have used a card in a while. Eventually they'll fall off your record, but it does take quite a while.
Right. Yeah.
And then also the balances that you keep on them. So when we think about, if you have $1,000 limit and you're always at $900, then that's going to impact your credit score as well, because it's showing that you're using your limit to the capacity. So you really don't have that much space to borrow anymore. So financially, you're almost maxed out. Whereas if you had $1,000 limit and you maybe had $100 on there, you're at 10% usage. You clearly have a lot of space within that credit profile that you could have access to more money if you needed it. So that's another space around credit to be mindful of how much you use on a rolling basis.
All right. And I would just add too, you can check your credit score at Experian.com. There's Credit Karma, where you can check. So use that as a tool and resource as a measurement of where you are. And it tells you where your credit limit at. If you're at 50% of using that credit, then you'll know you need to slow down on your spending and pay some of that debt down.
And Dr. Harper, if I could just add this in it, this is just very briefly to add on what Iwana, Kay, and Teresa have shared so clearly here. That's that FICO score, FICO, which is the Fair Isaac Corporation. And again, there's a calculation, and you all can do some independent research on your own on this, but it's going to focus on, hey, what are the types of credit you're using? What's the length of the amount of time that you've had credit? What's the amount you owe? Your payment history, and then also any new credit that you're looking to establish. And out of all of that pie, if you looked at it, the most important one is your payment history. And you have heard it repeated by our partners today. Pay it by that deadline so that you don't have the interest added on to it or those late fees that the team referenced a little bit earlier. So it's going to take some independent study to keep going around some of these things. So, all right, Dr. Harper, please, back to you.
So moving away from credit onto this other aspect of financial well-being, are there general stock investment tips? Anything in general you could say about stocks or investing?
For me, I would say read everything you possibly, if you're interested in it, right? So if you're interested in investing, and I don't know, people are in different spots in their journey as far as they invest. So investing in yourself savings, that's one way to do it. Your own, if you're doing, I think Teresa mentioned earlier about Roths and 401ks. Even if you have children, you can start youth Roths and IRAs and different funds like that for your children. 529s. There's just different ways that you can really start to leverage your money and invest them. And then I would think about, one of the rules of thumb that I was told earlier is just you invest in things first and get comfortable, and then kind of move into. You can certainly with how you are philanthropically, matching gift funds through your company. There's a lot of different spaces that you can go into. I think the first is figuring out what you have access to. So where you are, if you are at a job that does match your 401k, you certainly want to lean into those spaces. You really want to talk to your HR representative. They're a great resource. Like Teresa talked about earlier, there's so many folks that are available to you. You just have to tap into them. And so HR is there as an institution within your organization for a reason, right? They're experts in this space. You lean on them, you call them, you wear them out till you understand it. And that's the functionality of it. And you ask questions. And as you get into, when I first started working, I was more aggressive in how I allocated my funds. I went for, there's large, we can get into like different kinds of ways you can capitalize yourselves, but I chose more aggressive funds because I knew I had a longer time to work. And if it didn't work out, I had time to recover. Now that I'm further along in my career, I choose less aggressive funds because I have more responsibility and I can't be as daring with my money because I want to make sure that I'm being responsible and leaving a legacy for my child. So I think it depends on where you are in your journey and how you want to allocate some of your resources to that. But certainly, bar none, making sure that you invest in yourself first is critical.
And research.
Yes.
Well said. Well said. Pay yourself what? I want somebody to drop it into the chat, Scholar. Somebody drop it in the chat.
We've say it. I was about to shout it out.
We said it about 90 times already. Somebody drop it into the chat. And again, I just want to touch on something, Dr. Harper, before we give it back to you. We're just going to keep rolling with the Q&A here, and in a couple of minutes, get a closing thought from everyone. But the risk tolerance will change over time. And a panelist, I would assume you would agree with this. I think Iwanaka gave a perfect example of that. She was able to focus her investment portfolio in a different way in one phase of her life than maybe she does now, or as an individual getting close to retirement, they will want to make adjustments. All the more reason for something we put in the chat earlier, you must find a trusted advisor to help you with the financial pieces. It's okay if you don't know it. It's not okay if you don't ask someone, and you have to ask someone that you can trust. If it's Wells Fargo, great. Wonderful. We have amazing folks that can do those kinds of things, but you have to make the determinations on the individuals that are going to help you along your financial journey. So just want to continue to have that on the record. And again, of course, please do not act on any of the advice that's been provided. I'll just let the disclaimer fade out. So fade to black there, Dr. Harper, please, let's keep it going.
So those are great tips. Those really are great tips because, it's this idea of that, we talk about invest what you care about, right? Because you're going to be following that. You're going to believe you have vested interest in it doing well. So you're going to pay attention to it because it does require an amount of homework and studying and kind of staying on top of it. So one of the other things when we start talking about just kind of the things that we're personally committed to and what we believe in, one of the questions is, how would you recommend someone save up for a house when home prices continue to rise and the interest rates go up so high? How do you really plan for that given, the reality?
Yeah, I literally had this conversation with a friend of mine from college this afternoon. And I talked to my parents are like, I had 18.25%. And I'm like, so when you think about it, it's in flux, right? It ebbs and flows. And I think current market rate, with APRs and everything. So 6.25 is it's still a good rate. And I understand that folks are taken aback by sticker shock, right? And I live just outside of DC. This is one of the higher cost markets in the country, and it is challenging. I mean, we're not sugarcoating, right, what the market is, but the reality of it is home ownership it's a need, right? Like it's part of the hierarchy. And if you're renting, which is an option, right? Like that's a great opportunity to really kind of understand the scale of home that you want to buy. You get that first opportunity, that first taste to really be on your own and manage your budget and your market. But you are paying someone else's mortgage, right? You may not be paying your own, but you're paying someone else's. And so you could take that investment for yourself and pay your own mortgage at some point when you're able to really make that leap. And home ownership, you really have to understand it just like anything else, getting education on the home buying process, understanding, what it takes from a financial standpoint. And so you really have to think about, where do you want to live? What's the cost of living in that market? You know, what type of home do you want to live in? And really start looking at products and programs that are available in those marketplaces, you know, having quality realtors, loan officers that you can work with, and really understanding the process and be that trusted advisor to guide you through that. And then once you're in that space, you can start to build a plan to understand from a credit perspective, where do I need to fit in the product that's going to suit me? What does my income look like? Where should I be? And what do I qualify for? And so I think understanding those as a baseline is really important. And then having that in your mind as you're going through where you want to purchase and how you want to be there. The interest rates are they're going to be reactive to the market, right? And so that's going to ebb and flow, but your need for home ownership is going to be a mainstay. And so while it seems daunting, and it's the largest purchase that many will make in their lifetime, it's one that it takes a village, and, you know, you really do need trusted folks that you can lean on to talk through that, but it's doable, and it's still a great market. So I would encourage people that if you're interested in purchasing and you're interested in buying, to do the due diligence and to find folks that you really trust in that process to kind of work with you through it.
Yeah. And I would say for the home buying process for me, I took advantage of my 401k. I didn't have a family member that could give me $20,000 or $30,000 for, that down payment. So I took advantage of my 401k and borrowed from that to purchase my home, because that was an option for home buying. So and that was the advantage of me being able to invest in my 401k. After 10 years, I still was able to take some money out to purchase my home.
Right. Well, and then there's also that is a huge point, because you can borrow against your 401k for that specific purpose for home ownership. And then also within every market, there's first-time homebuyer assistance, there's down payment assistance programs, there's mortgage certificates that you can receive from the municipalities in which you live in. And so again, doing that due diligence and then having folks that are have a vested interest in you succeeding, that know about these programs and can get you in touch with having that access to that cash. Some employers provide some of that. So it's just a matter of really, I think one of the questions I'd seen at some point was around kind of negotiating certain things. I mean, that's always on the table. So I think there's things that you can ask for if you're moving into a space and that's a real priority for you. It's just a matter of what your plan is and how you want to work it.
Yeah.
So disclaimer, I live in Maryland as well. And I distinctly remember when I came to Maryland, my job had a live where you work program. So when you start thinking about also, where do you want to work when you graduate? That's something to look into as well. Because your employer may actually offer something that will help you get into your home or match your down payment or something. So those are good things to think about as you move forward. One of the questions really kind of deals with this is we're talking about, either preparing to buy a house, preparing to buy a car, all these other things that are major life stages and major purchases. One of the questions that was mentioned is, how do you budget on an annual scale? And we know that you can obviously go online, you can find out how much home you can afford. So then you kind of know how much to set aside. Those are things you can plan for, but for the things that you don't know, how do you account for taxes being cut or automatic investments being taken out? What does that look like when you really looked at what's your annual plan and how do you think that through and how do you plan for the unexpected?
I would say some employers, when you take advantage of the tax-free dollars that's come out before your pay. So you take advantage of investing in that, so you get the match savings and you're not being taxed at that. But also to have an emergency savings plan, because if COVID taught us one thing, is that we need to have an emergency savings plan. And most individuals were impacted because they didn't have at least $400 in savings. So if you can save up, $25 or a month or so, just to kind of build a savings plan for yourself, I will add that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. When you think about your expenses, right? So how much you spend on food, necessities, utilities, your home, golden rule, some folks talked about like 30% of your income should go towards housing and things like that. But then I'd also think from when you go into the purchase, there's a lot of things that you're not thinking about, whether it's taxes, transfer title, it's closing cost, it's your furniture, right? Like you don't think about, you think about the structure, and then you don't necessarily think about, turning your utilities on or switching them, furnishing it. Window treatments are very expensive. Like there's just certain things that you just don't take into consideration, let alone if you're going into it and you want to do any kind of renovations or DIY when you sweat equity to put into the home. So there really has to be some forethought about, what do you want to accomplish and how much do you want to save? And then there's always going to be that space where you just have these unforeseen, it could be an illness, it could be, God forbid, a car accident or anything that could just, we all know life can change in an instant. And so you can't be prepared for everything, but if you give yourself, they always talk about having 4 to 6 months of a cushion, right? So that you can pay your bills, that you can live, you have a little bit of breathing room to be able to allocate funds as you need to. That's just been my rule of thumb, but you can certainly adjust that to kind of where you are in your life journey. But I would certainly try to put into that plan a couple of months before, and this is before you start investing. And so I think that's one piece that we kind of didn't really touch on for me, is that I didn't start investing until I was at a comfortable space that my needs were met and I didn't have to ask. You can't go borrow from other people to go invest, and borrow meaning like from family and friends. There's a whole nother strategy around borrowing and investing, but that's for another session. But but truthfully, when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, if you're not able to take care of your baseline things, thinking about investing should be something that you put off a little bit later until you can kind of get through the fundamental things that you need to take care of, which are, your current goals and your debts and savings that you need to have in place to live comfortably.
So we've talked about, I feel like the entire gamut, like we've talked about credit, we've talked about saving, building a budget and buying a home and investing, 401ks, your retirement. But putting all of that in a bow is the last question here. And that is, how do you actually go about finding a financial advisor, and when is the best time to get one?
For me, it's as soon as I started making any kind of income. I'm very blessed. I have friends that I grew up with that's just what they did, and I could lean on them and talk to them and ask them questions. If you don't have a source, you're on college campuses right now that have these offices. They have programs to create CPAs, programs to create, wealth advisors, tax attorneys. I would, meet with some of these professors. They have networks. There's professional clubs that are on your campuses that I would lean into. Even within my organization, within Zeta, I met SOARs that have gone through this path and the work that they do. As you network over time, you'll find folks that pour into you equally as much as you get from them. And you start to organically build this relationship. You can certainly hire professionals to do this work for you. But if you're able to organically find them within your networks or the schools that you're at, I would certainly lean into those resources that are there. And then if you're, get on boards, once you're in doing this work, raise your hand to be in areas that you're not as familiar with, so you can just learn and be in the room. And in that space, you can start to glean some information, make some networks, and start to find more trusted advisors. But the more you put yourself out there to learn and be kind of a sponge, the more you'll get access to what you need to be successful in the spaces you want to go.
And I would just say, again, think about your goals, what you want to do, and do your research on the financial, financial advisors. We got to plug. I'm gonna plug Wells Fargo. We have financial advisors in the branches you can go on and talk to and have an exploratory conversation. So just make sure you do your research and know what it is that you want to, your goal is and what you want to save for, or how you're planning. Just do your research around investments too. And I also want to plug a nonprofit organization that we work with. It's called the SIFMA Foundation, and they have a stock market game that is interactive, that is a simulation of the stock market. So if you don't know about investments, you can go there and learn about it at that. So it's the SIFMA Foundation, and it's the stock market game. So you can check it out there as well.
Can you spell that for us, Teresa, or drop it in the chat?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I drop it in the chat?
If not, we can spell it out.
SIFMA, S is in Sam, I is in Indian, F is in Frank, M is in Mary, A is in Apple. SIFMA Foundation, and it's the stock market game, and it's a live simulation of the stock market.
Got it. Thank you.
Securities
Thank you.
Industry and Financial Markets Association. Another acronym. We've been throwing acronyms at them all
Oh, I'm
day.
so sorry, yes.
No, listen, this is what bankers do. You know, we throw acronyms at you. But
If we
quick
could generate
overdraw.
$1 for each acronym, I mean, we would be on our way.
$1
Yeah.
towards the Jackie Robinson Foundation, of course.
Yeah.
Got to give those dollars to JRF. So, Dr. Harper, masterful facilitation. What do you think? Should we maybe get a closing thought from both of our partners and then go
Absolutely.
to closing items? So
Absolutely. It's a lot of great advice. So I definitely would say, let's get some closing thoughts on this.
we love it. Angel, we'll jump forward to the next slide. And I think that we reverse the order on these. I think that we have Teresa Tyson share. Yeah, we do. I remember. We have Teresa Tyson. Teresa, auntie. Let's get some of that auntie level advice. Keep this in mind. Go.
I would say keep this in mind. Don't spend more than you have. Don't take on more than what you need.
Come on.
Manage your debt appropriately, your credit card. Use those apps of Credit Karma. Go to handsonbanking.org and use those resources there. And have your emergency savings and use a credit card for emergency purposes only. I can't stress that enough. That was the first lesson I taught my son, and he lives by that today. Unfortunately, I didn't follow my own advice, but please follow my advice and don't be the poster child of what not to do. So just manage appropriately. And have fun in college. Don't start thinking about adulting so much. As my son say, adulthood is the worst hood, but you still have to think about it and get in that hood sooner or later, but enjoy college right now and don't get into too much debt.
Well,
Teresa Tyson, y'all. EB, bring us home. Iwana K. Brady.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it simple. Anything you want to do is possible. You just have to really be focused on it and have some accountability, find accountability partners along the way, and, write it down, look at it, revisit it, and everything you want to do is accessible to you, and you can own that home, you can travel the world, you can do all those financial goals you have for yourself, but do what you have to do so that you can do what you want to do. And that's really important, because once it's kind of my father told me, once you start working, you don't stop. And so it's really just in that space that you just want to make sure you're doing the things now that you have to do, so that you have that flexibility and that freedom with your money to do the things that you want to do. And so it's all attainable. You just have to keep yourself accountable and stay focused on what's important.
Okay, all right. Well, Iwana K., Teresa, thank you all so much for the great information that you all shared. Dr. Harper, masterful job there facilitating the Q&A. Should we bring her back? Should we bring Dr. Harper back? She's, her team is in charge of all of this, so I think we got to bring her back. And Teresa, let me tell you what. I'm gonna share something, and I know we're at the close. Can I share what you shared earlier? Now I'm gonna put you on the spot. This is Teresa Tyson's first live presentation over a webinar. First, nobody would have known that. had she not told us, she was bringing fire, as the kid, fire emojis in the chat for what she was delivering on. So Teresa, just masterful work there, and we'll find a way to bring you back. You know, we got Get Smart About Credit Month in April and some things that we're going to be discussing later in the year around paying for college and student debt and all. We're going to find a way to bring you back. Get Smart About Credit Month in October, baby, for that. So, all right. Well, listen, we've covered off on a lot of items here. Dr. Harper, a couple of final pieces, and I want to give you a moment for closing thought as well. As you jump to the next slide here with things, we've got some reminders for you. We've got a quick link that you can utilize to actually give us feedback. And you'll see that as the next page loads here for us momentarily. If you scan the QR code, boom, it's going to take you out. Great survey that Angel and Lucy put together for us around things. Angel, as always, thanks for your great work here. But go ahead and scan that QR code. It should take you out to a page. Give us feedback. We need to hear from you as we continue to refine the things that we're doing here. And hey, again, invite the team to campus. We'd be happy to come out and deliver things virtually or in person in instances where it makes sense to be able to do those kinds of things. So give us feedback and let's keep things moving. Next slide is for our great friends in the recruiting world. The internship timeline is now. NOW now. We have some important dates and deadlines here. And again, I'm going to ask everyone to get a screen grab of this. Of course, you'll get the playback as well. But you see the roles across our CAO groups. You see the roles across public affairs, audit, analytics and data, CAO supply chain, consumer lending, consumer controls, consumer risk, the master's degree programs, regulatory affairs, and others that are listed here, including work across our SDI or strategy, digital and innovation groups. Please note the far right-hand column, those are the job IDs. Jump out to the wellsfargo.com careers website or just Google Wells Fargo careers, type in those job IDs and those roles should come up for you directly. Please note, these are focusing on internships here for folks that are graduating and are focusing on, or are really focusing on 2023 summer start dates with these. So very important to note the dates and times. Angel, as we jump to the second to the last slide, these are the full-time opportunities. I'm going to submit to you all. There were some opportunities that were open in January that are no longer available. The ship has kind of sailed relative to those, but you've still got opportunities here for full-time roles in the CAO group, in audit, and analytics and data. Again, in the controls management space, corporate risk, and again, across the SDI or strategy, digital, and innovation worlds. Reference those job IDs. Share this information with folks that are going to be graduating or folks that have been recent graduates here. Make sure that you do not miss the deadlines. And please note, some of these postings may be taken down if there are really, really high volumes on these applications. So make sure that your resumes are ready and go ahead and get things submitted from there. Hey, as we close out, we're going to continue our webinar series. So we certainly hope that you can join us in February for our great discussion that will be taking place then. As always, I want to thank all of our partners that are on with us. We've got Lucy joining us. We've got, of course, Angel and Iwadike, Teresa, of course, Dr. Harper, and our buddy Barbara Scotland, who's also in the background here, but has been working with us so closely on these for all of these years. And so, team, this actually marks the 9th year of the Beyond College webinar series. I remember when we started these, Dr. Harper, you love this. We had a conference phone line and we had five slides. We had like 5 people on and they dialed in and we only talked about careers, but I think we've been able to cover so many other things here for today. So I want to say thank you. Dr. Harper, I want to give you a moment to share a closing thought and then we'll get everybody on the rest of their night.
Yep. Thank all of you guys for sharing some really insightful bits of information, particularly Teresa and Iwanake, but thank you, Dewey, the moderator extraordinaire, always my favorite, but thank you to all the students because this is really about you. And it takes a little bit of courage to say, look, I need to learn more. So congratulations to the students for really taking a step to empower themselves so that they are in the right place to actually make these moves so they are ready once they graduate. for high school and or college. But I am excited about the next one on the 16th of next month, because as we've talked about throughout this presentation, you got to have a group of people around you who understand, who are advocating for you, who are helping you do your absolute best. So
Yes.
finding mentors and sponsors, that also includes people who support your financial journey as well. So that is not just professional, it's all of those spaces. So thank you everybody for showing up and supporting this event.
All right. Dr. Harper, thanks a million. Team, stay safe. Have a wonderful rest of your night. A great, great weekend. We'll see you in Black History Month, February the 16th, for mentors and sponsors, your personal board of directors. Stay safe, everybody. Till next time, we'll be in touch. Good night.